ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings at the Foreign Desk in London, Max Robinson at the National Desk in Chicago, and from our desk in Washington, Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. Now there are nearly 9.5 million Americans who can't find a job. And according to Labor Department figures released today, almost 2 million of them have been thrown out of work since last July, when the recession began. The unemployment rate in December jumped sharply to 8.9%. And behind that basic figure, there are other, even more depressing facts. Tonight, a full report. First, here is Brit Hume.
The bad news was announced to a congressional hearing by the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Only 2 members were present, both Democrats, eager to hear the numbers. And they are grim. Joblessness among adult men up from 7.2% in November to 8%, highest since World War II. In manufacturing, unemployment jumped from 9.4% to 11.8%, with the bombed-out auto industry especially hard hit. Unemployment up there from 15.8% in November to 21.7%.
I just want to say at the outset that I think these figures this morning are devastating.
This recession is a Reagan recession. It is the direct result of Reagan tight money and Reagan high interest rates.
Today's figures and the reaction to them show what a difficult and tricky political problem the economy is. A year ago, the nation's worst problem was said to be inflation. By midsummer, it had become high interest rates. And now, beyond doubt, it is unemployment. Brit Hume, ABC News, on Capitol Hill.
This is Sam Donaldson. President Reagan, on his way out of the White House for a weekend at Camp David, voiced sympathy for the unemployed, but also continued determination not to deviate from his economic game plan.
Well, I think it's tragic. It's been coming on for a long time, I'm hoping, and that's why we have our program in place, and I think it's the only way to get us back to where we can provide the jobs for the people.
Well, is it necessary to bring down inflation? Do we have
No. And anyone who suggests that this is a deliberate part of bringing down inflation is, again, inventing something out of whole cloth. No.
When will it start picking up?
Well, I think that all of us expect there's going to be a few months of low period. We can't help that. But I think that as we get down toward the spring and going into the summer, we're going to see the economy begin to come back.
Most economic forecasts agree that the economy will come back later this year. But deliberate or not, the unemployment rate is likely to go even higher before that happens. Privately, Mr. Reagan's advisors now expect well over 9%. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, the White House.
Michigan has the highest unemployment rate in the nation, more than 15%, due largely to the crisis in the auto industry. That crisis today led to an historic move here in Chicago as union leaders voted to start talks with both GM and Ford that could lead to renegotiating their contracts. It's not just the auto industry that's wrestling with the idea of new contracts and concessions by labor. We have 2 reports, beginning with David Garcia on the auto industry.
Union hardliners worked the crowd outside the meeting room, promoting a no vote on any move toward concessions to the automakers.
It took us 44 years to get what we got. And we had to fight for everything that we got. And we ain't going to give up anything.
But even though their contract lasts until September, these UAW officials are facing economic realities. Car sales, the lowest in 20 years. 300,000 union members laid off. The automakers saying they can't compete with the cheaper Japanese labor market. As the meeting began, UAW President Douglas Fraser said there's really no choice in his recommendation.
That we begin collective bargaining discussions with General Motors.
In a closed-door meeting, Fraser prevailed, winning approval to begin discussions, only discussions, with the automakers.
We're going to be talking about job security with both Ford and General Motors, and you're really not reopening the existing agreement.
Last year, the UAW gave up nearly $1 billion in wages and benefits to try to help save Chrysler. While refusing to talk specific concessions to GM and Ford this early, the union leaders realized they may have to change the contract in order to save jobs. David Garcia, ABC News, Chicago.
This is Stephen Aug in Washington. This year, unions are scheduled to negotiate agreements covering about 4.5 million workers. Major contracts up in addition to the auto workers and their 750,000 members include oil refiners, the oil, chemical, and atomic workers, 55,000 members. The refinery workers bargained locally, and about 4,000 of them walked out at 2 Texas refineries today. The issues include pensions and job security as big oil companies try to shut down older refineries. Trucking, the Teamsters Union, 300,000 members. About 50,000 are out of work. With deregulation, there's new competition from non-union firms. The union may settle for work rule changes, allowing fewer employees and smaller wage increases. Rubber. The United Rubber Workers, 42,000 members. Competition from overseas and from plants covered by unions with lower-paid workers could mean smaller wage increases. Meatpacking. The United Food and Commercial Workers, 50,000 members. Low-wage, non-union competition could keep wage demands down in order to retain jobs at the big unionized packers. Traditionally, these industries have been covered by single contracts to which all the firms agree. But look what's happening. The meatpackers contract doesn't expire till August. But already Amour and Wilson have settled. The result, wages for workers at the two firms will be frozen for at least 2 years. 1982 could turn out to be an historic turning point in American labor relations. Not only do unified wage patterns appear to be breaking up, but salary demands and contract settlements are smaller than they have been, and that should help moderate inflation. Stephen Aug, ABC News, Washington.
Still ahead, the two largest antitrust suits in U.S. history are both settled out of court. Terrible weather around the world as California continues to dig out, and Britain battles its worst blizzard in years. And a family in Florida is caught between a community's generosity and the welfare department's red tape.
ABC's World News Tonight, brought to you by Post Grape Nut Cereal.
Delicious hot cereal. What is it?
Great. What is it?
Yummy. What is it?
Grape nuts?
It's a great hot taste from an unexpected place. Hot grape nuts. The recipe's easy. The result? A savory blend of wholesome wheat and barley, deliciously hearty, uniquely grape nuts. For a great hot taste from an unexpected place, hot grape nut cereal.
This is your chance, America. Your chance to show the world's great road cars just how good an American car can be. The name of this great new car is Pontiac 6000, an exciting new front-wheel drive automobile that does its talking where it counts, on the road. It's loaded for bear with an electronically fuel-injected 4-cylinder engine, McPherson strut front suspension, power rack and pinion steering, and available V6 or diesel. So let's go, Pontiac 6000. Now, the excitement really begins.
The federal government today dropped two long-standing antitrust suits against two giants of American business, AT&T, the telephone company, and IBM, the computer colossus. With the story, here is Bill Greenwood.
The AT&T settlement is the most expensive in history, giving Ma Bell 18 months to sell the 22 phone companies that provide local service to virtually everyone in America. They're valued at $80 billion, two-thirds of the company's assets. But AT&T gets to keep its nationwide long-distance telephone system, the Bell Laboratories research subsidiary, and Western Electric, which manufactures telephone equipment. Reporters were told it was either that or risk losing even more in a lawsuit that has cost the phone company $36 million in legal expenses.
I believe we've chosen the right course, although clearly it was not the solution that we sought.
There are some big pluses for AT&T. It loses its most heavily regulated subsidiaries. It loses 80% of its costly physical plant while retaining its most profitable operations. It's nothing for AT&T stockholders or employees to worry about. They're not expected to suffer any losses. But it could spell trouble for IBM, since the agreement would let AT&T compete in data processing. Analysts believe that's one reason the government was willing to dismiss the 13-year-old IBM case. The suit accused IBM of monopolizing the computer industry, but the Reagan administration did not believe it could win. Officials say competition has increased significantly in the 13 years since the IBM case was first filed. They insist today's decision was not a pro-business effort to weaken antitrust enforcement. Bill Greenwood, ABC News, Washington.
One other note, when advance word of the settlements reached Wall Street today, trading of both AT&T and IBM was suspended. And in yet another major change in previous government policy, this one on civil rights, the Internal Revenue Service announced it will no longer deny tax-exempt status to private schools, even if the schools practice racial discrimination. Carol Simpson has that story.
For 10 years, Bob Jones University in Greenville, South Carolina, and another Southern Christian fundamentalist school had fought the federal government's policy which denied them tax-exempt status because they allegedly practiced discrimination against blacks. University President Bob Jones said the government's policy was unfair.
If your religion conforms to our bureaucratic social policy, we will grant you exemption. We will acknowledge it as something we can endure. If not, then you pay a penalty for it, and that's not right.
From now on, Bob Jones University and other private religious schools that discriminate racially will be allowed tax-exempt status. NAACP President Benjamin Hooks said he considers the move another retreat on civil rights by the Reagan administration.
This last action, coupled with all the other actions that have been taken, is given real encouragement, real comfort, real aid to any reactionary racists in this country.
The Internal Revenue Service said if Congress wants the government to again deny tax-exempt status to segregated private schools, then the legislative branch should write such a law. But given the present conservative mood of this Congress, that appears highly unlikely. Carol Simpson, ABC News, Washington.
In an Atlanta courtroom, a police officer today contradicted the only public statement Wayne Williams ever made about his presence on the Chattahoochee River Bridge last summer, the incident that resulted in Williams being charged with 2 of the Atlanta murders. Bob Serkin reports.
June 4th, 1981, Wayne Williams, asking that his face not be shown, conducts a news conference at his home after being interviewed by the FBI. Williams explains that before he was stopped and questioned near a river bridge a few weeks earlier, he was out trying to find the address of a potential business client. I stopped at a liquor store to call the woman for the right address, said Williams. Then I stopped at a convenience store to pick up some boxes. But in court today, Atlanta police officer Carl Holden, staked out near the bridge that night, contradicted Williams' statement. Holden, using a scale model of the area, testified that Williams' car never stopped after crossing the bridge. Moments before, another member of the stakeout team, Officer Robert Campbell, radioed Holden saying he had heard a loud splash in the river. Campbell, then an inexperienced police recruit, denied under tough cross-examination implications that he may have been drunk or asleep at the time of the incident. And although they suspected Williams of dumping a body in the river, the stakeout team admitted they never confiscated evidence from Williams' car or searched the river while he was detained. To make its case, the burden remains on the state to show how Williams disposed of the 2 men he is accused of murdering. No one has yet testified to ever seeing the bodies enter the river or Wayne Williams ever stopping his car on the bridge. Bob Serkin, ABC News, Atlanta.
Black Liberation Army member Anthony Nicholas Laborde has been extradited to New York in connection with the October robbery of a Brinks truck. Security was tight in Philadelphia today, where Laborde was arrested last night. When arrested, he was carrying an automatic weapon and bulletproof vest. Bail has been set at $2 million.
This cherished drop of oil of Olay works in mysterious ways to help you look younger. While it softens everywhere, remarkably, oil of Olay seeks out the drier skin that needs it most, imparting precious extra fluids where tiny dry lines may be more apparent, to create a softer, younger, more harmonious look. Discover the secret of oil of Olay. It can help you look younger, too.
Come on, Harry. Call a strike. We can't lose this one.
Hey, losing your dentures, Bobby?
There's nothing funny about loose spots. I found out. I also found Fixodent.
Fixodent helps fix loose spots. Fixodent spreads evenly, filling tiny gaps between dentures and gum with ingredients that give added dimension to holding.
Here's Charlie. He's no problem now, and neither are my loose spots.
Hey, guys, have a ball.
Today's Fixodent helps fix loose spots.
You've got a ticket on the Heartburn Express. If one Rolaids tablet can't cut the mustard, you should know about one Tums and one Rolaids tablet both neutralize the stomach acid in seconds. But when your stomach turns out 1/3 more acid, Tums can still absorb it. Rolaids can't. Not in seconds, not ever. That's why you should switch to
In Northern California, the cleanup goes on following this week's devastating mudslides. The major effort is now shifted to Santa Cruz, south of San Francisco, where where today the full scope of the disaster became known. Ken Kashiwahara reports.
In Santa Cruz County today, we got our closest look at the extent of the largest devastation of the storm. In the Love Creek area, half of a mountainside fell off, leaving about a square mile of mud and downed trees where thick forests and houses once stood. Workmen are continuing to cut through the debris, searching for as many as 20 residents believed to be buried under it and presumed dead. Clothing is scattered about on trees, and parts of houses stick out through the branches. It is the only evidence that 6 to 8 homes were once here. The death toll from the storm now stands at 24, and damage estimates have exceeded the $300 million mark. But amidst all the devastation in Love Creek stands what is being called a miracle. This house. The mudslide and fallen trees simply went around it, missing the structure by only a few feet. And those who live here have only one explanation for it.
Providence? Really? Really? The hand of God was here, all around it.
Meanwhile, parts of Santa Cruz County have been hit hard by a water crisis. Restaurants and businesses that use water have been closed, and National Guardsmen are dispensing water from tanks, either because residents don't have any or because the water in their homes is undrinkable. But water and mud weren't the storm's only destructive forces. In the Lake Tahoe area, about 3,000 residents are stranded by 10 feet of snow. Snowplows have been unable to get through so far. Some residents are running out of food, and the roofs of 2 houses reportedly caved in. But Northern Californians may not have seen the last of the storm's after effects. Today, workmen were sandbagging the Sacramento River Delta, where rising tides over the weekend could cause flooding in the farmland below. Ken Kashiwahara, ABC News in Northern California.
Overseas this Friday, nowhere has been colder than Siberia, 76 degrees below zero. But in Europe and Great Britain, it's been cold, snow, or flooding, and sometimes a combination. As a result, a number of people have died. Here in Britain, as ABC's John McKenzie reports, no corner of the country has been untouched.
For most British, the day started off badly and just got worse. When the snow wasn't falling, it was blowing. It was enough to shut down schools and prevent workers from getting to their jobs. There were snowdrifts 8 feet high in places, forcing Scottish ranchers to search for lost sheep. In Wales, road conditions were so bad, police warned people not to drive unless it was a matter of life or death. Country roads especially were littered with abandoned cars. Even out of the drifts, life wasn't much easier as cars crawled along what few roads remained open. Most of Britain's airports had to shut down. Here at London's Heathrow, workmen struggled to keep one of its 2 runways operating. Through it all, the British had to contend with the damp, bone-chilling cold. Temperatures plunged to 16 degrees below zero, 1 degree away from Britain's record low. Weathermen here say the cold and the snow will continue through the weekend. But even when the thaw begins, there will still be problems. Another round of flooding. Parts of central Britain are still under a foot of water from the last snowstorm here 2 weeks ago. John McKenzie, ABC News, London.
Here in London today, Spain announced it will end its 14-year-long blockade on the Rock of Gibraltar. The decision, effective in April, was announced after a meeting between the Spanish and British prime ministers. In April, negotiations will also begin on the Rock's long-term future. They will be delicate. The Rock has been British since 1704. Spain claims sovereignty and wants the island fortress back. Gibraltarians want to stay British. Their attitude so angered the late General Franco of Spain that in 1968 he cut all Gibraltar's land and sea links with the Spanish mainland.
I have a throbbing headache.
Yeah, really bad?
I got it this morning taking my son to school. Right on top of my hip, right here.
Look here, 2 regular strength tablets of this pain reliever, 650 milligrams. These others, 650, 650, or 800 milligrams in a special formula, Anacin. Would you take Anacin, Mrs. May?
Yes, I would. I took the 2 Anacin and I feel better.
You think you might use next time you have a headache?
Might? Anacin.
Get the Anacin Difference, tablets or capsules.
Are you a saltaholic? Do you think most everything needs salt? Then you're a saltaholic. Like most Americans, you eat more than 20 times the salt your body needs. Now, with new No Salt, you can have the flavor of salt without salt. No Salt tastes like salt, but there's no salt in No Salt. You can shake No Salt, cook with No Salt, No Salt, and shake the salt habit.
These are sheet fabric softeners. You put them in your dryer once, and they do 1 load.
This is Free and Soft, the revolutionary fabric softener. You put it in once and it does a month's worth of soft, static-free clothes. You attach Free and Soft to your dryer like this. Then every time you use your dryer, clothes come out soft and static-free. No sheet softener stops static better. The choice is yours. Once-a-load softeners or Free and Soft, the once-a-month fabric softener.
Do it, America. Make your home what you've always wanted it to be. This ad in Sunday's paper introduces Home Repair and Improvement, the books that show you everything, from fixing faucets to transforming your home. You'll be amazed at what you can do when Time Life Book shows you how. To see the first book, mail this coupon. And if you circle this emblem, you'll get a 6-piece screwdriver kit free with your first book. Look in Sunday's paper and circle the emblem for a gift from Time Life Books.
Made up out of whole cloth and not a shred of truth in it. That was President Reagan's reaction today to a story in the Washington Post that suggested White House Counselor Edwin Meese might, in several months or perhaps a year, be named Attorney General. And while walking to his helicopter this afternoon, the president restated his hope for a summit meeting with Soviet President Brezhnev, thus confirming a report on this broadcast 2 nights ago by Barry Dunsmore. Peter?
In Poland itself today, the Interior Ministry said there were no strikes going on for the first time since the independent union was founded. The deputy minister also said there had been 199 strikes since martial law began. As the campaign against solidarity intensified, a member of the Communist Party's Politburo said before martial law, the union had prepared a hit list. Alban Shivak said the list of party members Solidarity wanted killed was startlingly long. There is no independent evidence such a list exists. There are some further small signs today that martial law is easing up. As Greg Dobbs takes note in our monitoring report, travel inside Poland will be easier for some.
Polish television tonight showed film of the nation's first commercial flight, 44 passengers, Warsaw to Krakow. At the same time, the government announced that payphones in Krakow and all other provincial capital cities will be reconnected on Sunday, although the government says it may still listen in and cut calls that threaten the state. And while the government doesn't acknowledge it, uncensored Western reports say that about half of the estimated 40,000 soldiers currently assigned to Warsaw are being withdrawn, although this still leaves roughly 7 times the normal number. Meanwhile, while Polish TV did tonight boast of higher production at this important tractor plant, it failed to say why, namely that soldiers are helping in factories, farms, mines, and public transportation nationwide, a fact admitted by the government and seen in the West as evidence that soldiers are working where civilians must not be. Also tonight, there was a special program on this coal mine in Piast, where it was implied that to work, a miner must swear loyalty to the state. Officially unreported, though, was that loyalty oaths were publicly attacked this week by Poland's Catholic Archbishop Glemp, putting himself for the first time in direct opposition to the military regime. Finally, good news for Solidarity from this Warsaw courthouse. 4 members were acquitted of illegally organizing strikes. The judge said the strike at their auto plant had been a spontaneous protest against martial law. Greg Dobbs, ABC News, London.
One other note from Poland, an important message, in fact, from General Jaruzelski to President Reagan. It's being carried by Philip Johnston, the U.S. representative of CARE. Mr. Johnston has just come out of Poland. He's in Paris tonight. He expects to go to Washington this weekend. Frank?
Secretary of State Haig leaves this weekend for Brussels and a conference on Poland with the NATO foreign ministers. Haig will then go on to Israel. And ABC News correspondent Carl Bernstein has learned the secretary will tell Prime Minister Begin the United States wants to end the acrimony with Israel and revive the strategic cooperation agreement suspended by Washington after Israel annexed the Golan Heights. The current world situation will be discussed by West Germany's Chancellor Helmut Schmidt this Sunday on This Week with David Brinkley.
Kmart. Dollar Day. Slashed prices. Kmart price. On hundreds of items throughout the store. Your savings store. Extra savings. Kmart savings. In every department during Dollar Day. At Kmart. Check your newspaper supplement for the prices. Oh, prices. And save. Save during Dollar Day. Dollar Day. Now through Saturday. At Kmart.
Only one American car company's sales were up in '81. Only Chrysler, Ford, and GM were down. Even all the imports combined were down. Chrysler was up because Chrysler has the cars, quality, and prices America wants. And now, Chrysler helps you buy a new car with a check you can keep or apply to your down payment on most new 81s and 82s. Make your best deal. Then get a car, get a check direct from Chrysler. Get $300 to $1,000 from Chrysler. Check it out.
Fresh perked ground roast coffee. There's nothing like it. Or is there? Is there another way to get that ground roast look? That wonderful aroma? That delicious fresh perked taste? Ah, Taster's Choice. Freeze-dried as soon as it's perked to capture real ground roast flavor. Taster's Choice, regular and green label decaffeinated. Looks, smells, and tastes like ground roast coffee. Ah.
The administration said today it may require Medicare patients to pay 10% of their hospital costs for stays longer than 1 day. It's claimed this change would save the government at least $500 million a year, but Republican Senator John Heinz of Pennsylvania said such an increase in out-of-pocket expenses would mean that fewer of the elderly would obtain the care they need. Max?
Finally tonight, a story about a family in need. A story from Clearwater, Florida, where people tried to help a middle-aged cancer victim and her daughter, only to find warm hearts don't necessarily melt red tape. Rebecca Chase reports.
Jessica Miche dreaded Christmas. When you're poor and your mother has cancer and can't work, it's a cruel time for a 12-year-old. Jessica and her mother, Betty Jean, live in public housing. Their only income is welfare, $150 a month. But this Christmas was different. A story about Jessica in the Clearwater Sun newspaper touched hundreds of people. They brought presents and money, $2,300.
We had a Christmas to end all Christmases. If we never have another one, we had one.
Jessica's world was filled with hope, but now comes the Grinch who threatens to spoil this special Christmas. The Grinch is the federal government and a new rule which says you can accept the charity or you can receive a welfare check, but not both. A letter from the state welfare office says the Miches might lose their welfare benefits because they receive too much income in Christmas gifts.
Now when somebody else needs help, if HRS is allowed to do this, people won't help again.
Florida Governor Bob Graham today asked the federal government to exempt the Miches and all welfare recipients from having to count Christmas gifts as income. Mrs. Miche is worried that she could lose her only means of support. But the problem is that the money she got for Christmas is gone. It went for things the Miches could never afford before, a car, new shoes, and other luxuries.
We went out to dinner. We haven't been out to dinner when we could go and order anything we wanted. I've been a waitress all my life. I tipped. I rode cabs and gave cab drivers $5, and said, Merry Christmas.
The Miches are hoping that the people who gave them such a good Christmas won't let the federal government take it away. Rebecca Chase, ABC News, Clearwater.
Thank you, Rebecca. Once again, tonight's top story. Unemployment in December shot up to 8.9%. 9.5 million Americans now out of work. The president says it's tragic, but better times are coming later this year. That's our report for now on World News Tonight. This is Frank Reynolds for ABC News. Good night from Washington.
Tonight, after the dark room, the strike force digs in and battles for its life. Tonight on ABC.